What is up, everybody? This is Ryan Ellis, and you're listening to the Marching Arts Society podcast, episode number 6. In this episode, we're going to discuss a conversation I recently had and the benefits of reaching out. So I was recently sent an email by a guy named Austin Bullock, and he is a 19-year-old quad drummer from Oklahoma City. In this email, he had explained that he had been listening to the podcast and the other content that the Marching Arts Society puts out, and that he had some questions for me about an upcoming audition he was planning on going to. So he's planning on auditioning for the Blue Devils, and obviously knowing that I had marched there, he wanted to get an inside look at what that experience is like. So before I go into what that conversation consisted of, I was already planning on doing an episode based on this topic for this very reason, because I know personally the benefits that can come from reaching out, having these conversations, and building relationships with people in the marching activity. So the educational benefits of something like this are apparent. If you are in a situation similar to him where you have an audition camp coming up, or maybe you haven't decided where you're going to audition, but you know that you are going to, you have a desire to, there are skill sets you want to get better at, and you know people who can help you, there's only growth to be had from creating those relationships. So in this conversation, which started as an email and then turned into a 40-minute long phone call, we dove into the specifics of my experiences at the Blue Devils audition, as well as other auditions, what he can kind of look forward to from an expectation standpoint at these camps. We talked about his prior experiences in drum corps and high school and college and things like that. And again, the educational benefits are obvious. What I want to discuss, though, is networking and what can be had from creating these relationships. So specifically, if we use this scenario, I now know who he is. So he now has access to me. We can have these conversations. If he has questions, he can ask them to me. But maybe more importantly, if he is put in a situation, and this is a situation that's very common at audition camps, where you are a potential contender for a spot, and you're up against a couple other people or one other person who's also a contender for a spot, and the staff has to find ways to separate. They have to find ways to make them feel more comfortable in who they're going to pick. And if you, as well as the people that you're up against, have been through the ringers of the audition, you've done the down the lines, you've done the individual audition, you have played on a fairly even level to these people, how do they decide who to pick? Because obviously they have to decide, they have to set their quad line, they have to set their snare line, and so on and so forth. And networking, oftentimes at an audition camp, is the deciding factor of who makes an ensemble. So what I mean by this is, if you're on staff at any ensemble, you'll know this firsthand. You're at an audition camp, you're deciding between a couple people, and you start to ask if anybody knows either of these people or any of these people who are on the cusp of making this spot. If anyone has any experience teaching them, if anybody is friends or knows any of the instructors who have taught them, you basically just start to test your network to see if you have any connection to this person so that you can get a better feel for their background. What were they like in previous drum lines? How are they as a person? Do they communicate well? Are they a hard worker? Are they passionate? All of these things. But the point being is that if you don't have this established network, there's no way for anyone to know these things about you. They would just have to take your word for it. So specifically, in the situation of Austin, if he goes to that Blue Devils camp and he is on the cusp of making it, and that staff is having trouble deciding between him and another person, it's very likely that they're going to reach out to people who have taught Austin, to people who have marched with him, all of these things to get a better feel for what he's like. So, in the circumstance that they were to reach out to me, knowing that I have at least had some communications with him, I would be able to give them a feel for what I think of him. Now, again, my my relationship with him currently is short-lived, but from the conversations that I've had with him, I can tell that he's passionate. I can tell that he's driven. I can tell that he cares about the way that he performs and that he wants to make these things happen for himself. And all of those play in to the amount of comfortability that a staff or a person can have in a person who is auditioning. So you need to make these networks for yourself. Now, how do you do it? You just need to reach out. Find the gatekeepers at the ensembles that you're auditioning for. If you're auditioning for the Blue Knights, reach out to Mike Jackson. Reach out to Taha. Reach out to people who are in charge of establishing who is going to make and not make these drum lines. And it's important that you evaluate the way in which you reach out. You want to get their help, you want to have these conversations, but it's also likely that people of that stature are already oversaturated with comments. So if in your desire to reach out, you kind of realize that maybe this person doesn't have time right now, you have to be respectful of that. The last thing you want is to approach one of these situations and be overbearing and be pushing and then create the opposite effect for yourself from what was intended, which is the staff now has a negative opinion of you. So don't do that. But I think it is completely okay to reach out. Send an email, send a Facebook message that just lays out who you are, what your intentions are if you're trying to make the ensemble that they teach or whatever the case may be, and just try to get feedback. If that means sending a video, potentially setting up Skype lessons, one quick conversation, whatever it is going to simultaneously give you more information on what that person is expecting and establish yourself in that culture. So when that audition camp comes and you show up at the audition, it's possible that they would know who you are, that they'll remember you as the one who reached out, who was thankful when they gave you help, things like that are going to play in to what the staff thinks of you. Now, again, all of this has to be completely genuine. It's not in anyone's best interest to try to reach out and pretend to be something you're not. Everyone's going to see through that. It's not going to work. So reach out, have questions, be respectful, do things in a positive manner so that you can get a positive result. But it's important that you establish this network. And this can be with anyone. I think that alongside doing it with staff, which is probably the most obvious direction to go, you can do it with people like myself or other people who have marched or have experience that aren't necessarily on staff of the specific drum corps you're auditioning for, but still have experience and a background that can help you out and give you more information. And the network of DCI and WGI is massive. They're aging out, or the people who are participating is growing every year, so that network is only getting bigger. The more people that you affiliate yourself with, that you learn from, that you create relationships with, the better your chances are of all of those things playing into a positive result at your audition camp. So specifically, in my case, I urge anyone who listens to this or anything out, please reach out. The reason that I do all of this, the reason that I started the Marching Arts Society, the reason that I create content like this is to help people. So if you are interested in auditioning, or you are just interested in growing yourself as a performer, as a percussionist, as a musician, please reach out. Send me an email. Leave a comment. I want to help. And all of these things are only going to factor in to the amount of people that you know that are capable of helping you. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you listen to the Marching Arts Society podcast or other content, please don't hesitate to share. I do want to get as many people as possible the help that they want and create the community that this activity deserves. If you want more content like this, you can check out our YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram page. And if you want to reach out to me personally, my email is ryanellis@marchingartsociety.com. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.